Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. This video right here is probably going to be the last video on this series of me teaching y'all these new found ways to think about the universe and how to apply these new ideas onto onto the physical plane and change the environment around you. If you remember in the first episode of this series, I taught y'all a new way to look at the universe, and instead of looking at the universe as a whole, to instead break it down into three basic planes. And I also taught y'all that all three of those planes vibrate, and that means that they're constantly in motion and they're constantly changing, which means they can be changed. In the video after that, I went into more detail about the physical plane and how the physical plane is the plane with the lowest level of vibration, which means it's the most changeable, it's the easiest to change. And I also went into detail about how that's the plane that we're contained to or stuck in until we die and evolve into the next plane. And in the video after that, which was last video, I talked about the mental plane and how our mental component, which is our brain or our mind, exists in comparison to the universe. And I also talked about how our mind is really only used to transmit information to our body and to the universe, receive information from our body and from the universe, store that information, and reuse that information in order to change the physical environment around us. And with that being said, today we're going to be talking about the spiritual plane. And the very first thing I got to understand about the spiritual plane is that it has the highest level of vibration. What that means is that it's the hardest to change and it's the most complex. It's also the hardest to define because it's the only plane that doesn't have a physical manifestation. Think about it. The physical plane can be represented by our body and the things around us that we can touch. The mental plane can be represented by our brain and how we interact with the things around us. But the spiritual plane doesn't have that physical manifestation. That lack of physical embodiment is why the spiritual plane is often confused for the mental plane. But in this video, I'm gonna teach y'all the difference between the two, where the mental plane is a transmitter, receiver, a store, and a reapplication of information. The spiritual plane is where things like desires and emotions and beliefs come from. That they all originate from the spiritual plane, not the mental. And that is because the spirit or the spiritual plane or whatever you want to call it is the only part of you that is you. We've already established that the physical plane consists of the tangible and intangible aspects of matter, energy, and force that surrounds us. But you can't touch your emotions, and you definitely cannot use your desires as a replacement for fundamental energies like electricity and wind. And you most definitely cannot use your beliefs as a replacement for the fundamental forces of the universe, such as gravity or inertia or the strong force or the weak force. And that right there is why emotions can't come from this physical plane. We've also established that the mental only transmits information to the body and to the universe, receives information from the body and from the universe, stores that information, and then reuses that information on the physical plane. But I want you to pay attention to what I just said. In no part of that did I say that or go into detail about how the mental creates anything. So if the mental doesn't create anything, which is something I touched on my last episode, then it can't create things like desires or emotions or beliefs. And that leaves the spiritual plane to be the only place where these things can be created. But people still make the mistakes of thinking that things like emotions and desires and beliefs come from the mental, come from your brain. But I want you to step back and think about it. When you feel a very strong emotion, do you feel it in one centralized location, being the brain or the heart, or do you feel it in different areas of the body at different times. You most likely chose the second option, and that is true. Because if you really think about it, if emotions came from the mental, you would feel every single emotion just in the brain. You would only feel it in the brain. And that's because that's a physical embodiment of the mental plane. So if emotions came or were generated in the mental plane, you would only feel it in your brain. But no, instead you feel it at different areas of your body at different times. And the same thing can be said for the physical plane. If emotions came from the physical plane, you would feel emotions evenly throughout your whole entire body. But instead you don't. You feel different emotions at different times. This is due to the fact that, like I said before, the spiritual doesn't have a physical embodiment. What this allows the spirit to do, it allows it to move freely throughout the whole entire body. It's not stuck to one spot or one area on the body or on the physical plane. It's allowed to move freely. If you don't believe me, look at this chart. Look at this heat map of where emotions are felt. As you can see, different emotions heat up different areas of the body. This idea or thought pattern or whatever you want to call it of the spiritual moving around your body can also be applied to desires, because you don't feel desires in one place on the body. For example, lust, the desire for sex, can be felt mostly in your nuts, my nigga. You get horny. Or sometimes you feel it in your stomach as that tingling sensation or that tingly feeling that just makes you feel weird. Or sometimes you feel it in your heart as that loud ass, fucking hard ass thumping against your chest. Again, a desire being felt in different regions of the body. Another example is fear, which is the desire for understanding. You can feel fear as that chill that runs through your back, or you can feel it as the hairs on your arms raising. Or you can also feel it as that one lonely streak of sweat that runs through your armpits. But either way, it's the same emotion, but you just feel it in different areas of the body. Sometimes you might feel them at the same time, but they're in different areas. And that's because, again, the spiritual is not tied down to a physical plane, a physical object. So it's allowed to move freely. That concludes this video. But that doesn't conclude this series, because all I've done is teach you about the basic fundamentals of the universe. I've taught you about its three planes, but I haven't went into deep detail about them. I just given you a brief description. But I'm not even gonna do that, because that's not even the point of this. The point of this first 4 parts was to teach y'all that y'all can change your physical environment. And if you want a refresher on that, go back and check out the last episode. But now, since I've done that, I can go into more detail on how exactly you do it and how you can apply these fundamentals into your daily life in order to change your environment. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and share it with a friend. Goodbye.